Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode. I'm Brandon Cobb, your host, co founder of HBG Capital. And today I've got Dan Fradenburgh on the show. Dan is a paradox of meat, despite being the only part human. He deals in physical, digital, and mental real estate. He's an author and host of Chess with Investors, the Chance Encounters commercial real estate investor interview series on dandoesdeals.com, and the provocative site aiming to disillusion newcomers to the real estate space, real estate is a scam.com. Please welcome the man, the myth, the snow Mexican, Dan Fradenburgh. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Wow, thanks for that intro. That was fantastic. I really enjoyed that.
Dude, you get by far number one blue ribbon award for best introduction. Like that's freaking hilarious. I've really enjoyed getting to know you, being on your podcast. You've got a huge personality. I'm excited to get into some personal branding stuff today. Talk about what you guys are doing on the real estate debt fund side. But before we jump into everything, for those that don't know who Dan Fradenburgh is, tell us your story.
Well, it's eclectic. I guess the best place to start would be the background that you see behind me, which is a photo from my last apartment in Taipei, Taiwan. I lived in Taiwan for 15 years, and Mandarin is my second language. So I've spoken Mandarin every single day for at least 20 years now. And it's not something you usually expect from a guy with a red beard. And usually, when
No.
you have people who speak another language, there's something that I came up with as I was learning and observing other people who lived there for a while, struggling with the language and stuff like that. There's a good enough valve. A lot of people see, like in Taiwan especially, if you speak any Mandarin, like you can order food off a menu, they'll treat you like you just rescued a puppy from a burning building or something like that. So it's really easy to be satisfied with your level. But I ended up taking it much further than the average person,
Uh,
learning about how to do banking and all that kind of stuff. But I ended up coming to real estate through my CRM agency after working for web.com. I had my client base were all seven figure and up revenue generating online businesses, and I was helping them with their online funnels and then eventually all their development as a full stack developer. But I got into real estate doing that back in 2014, and I got into personal branding around 2019.
Man, I'll tell you what's kind of funny about that. You're so right about the Mandarin thing. One of my favorite videos I remember watching is the American who is in, I don't know what part of maybe Taiwan or China, I don't know where he is, but over there, he, kind of goes up and like he'll order food from these places and he'll kind of pretend, that he doesn't really know it very well. And then, he's kind of speaking English and they can't really communicate, look at him funny. And then all of a sudden he just starts speaking perfect fluent Mandarin, and you can see the look on these Chinese people's faces, and they're just like stunned, and like a group will kind of come and like want to talk to him. And it's just funny because if you see a Chinese looking person here that starts speaking English, you're not going to see that kind of effect. So it was really funny to see the cultural differences there and how they speak the languages.
Yeah, absolutely. And it reminds me, I had this one boss while I was out in Taiwan. He was so funny, and he's really good at taking people down a peg or two. And one of the things he was saying about that is like, like people would also like if you're using chopsticks in a restaurant, they're like, "Wow, you can use chopsticks." And he's like, "Well, it's not like I walk up to you and say, 'Wow, you can use a knife and fork.'" Like, right?
It is funny. So if you get check, go check those out if you're listening. If you haven't seen the like American dude walking around ordering food in Mandarin, it's really funny to see those reactions. But we're not here to talk about Mandarin YouTube videos today. We're talking about you. I know one of the things that you've really built a name for yourself on. Like I just got done watching this YouTube video where Gilbert Gottfried and these other celebrities are like Dan Fradenburgh, and they're talking you up and talking about your services and falls. It was freaking hilarious. You haven't seen that, you got to go check out that video. Gilbert Gottfried is giving you a shout out, and it's really, really funny from somebody who is undoubtedly an expert in the personal branding space. Tell us a little bit about what you learned along your journey. Like, what bits of wisdom can you pass on? Because this personal branding space is something that is not going away. There is a future that is already here. Where if you don't have some kind of personal brand, if you don't have an ability for customers to connect with you personally online without speaking to you over the phone, without emailing you, you're going to lose because business is done with the connection that is made through your online presence and the type of content and thoughts and feelings that they have when they're looking you up and they're engaging with your content. That future is already here because if you're not going to do it, somebody else is. Whoever's providing the most free value and is able to make those connections is the person who's going to come out on top. And you're an expert in that. So maybe tell us like your journey and some of the big pearls of wisdom that you've learned along the way on how to build a strong personal brand.
I love the way you put that question. I think that the unique contribution that I can bring is, I mentioned that I got into real estate through CRM and basically back end funnels, the entire tech stack and that kind of stuff. I really valued my privacy. If you have a background in digital security, like I was dealing with credit card transactions, I had admin access to about 3 million different credit card numbers with full address, expiry dates, whole nine yards. And so as a result, I know exactly how nasty people could be out there, and always like to have that sort of private life, but until basically privacy became a little bit too expensive, and that's 100% to your point. You need to be in personal branding now, and you have to stand out. Now, as a very private person, like the video that you were mentioning, and if you want to check it out, you can go to danfradenburg.com/sizzle to check that out. If you have young ears around, you might want to use some headphones because there's some stuff that I don't think it makes it to the PG-13 level. Gilbert's a funny kind of guy. But anyway,
Yeah.
I think the story of that really goes into the pearls of wisdom, as you're calling it, which is that I like to tell people online in my content that I'm from the internet. And part of being from the internet means that I know exactly how miserable trolls can be online. They can say all sorts of unfounded things. And I was concerned that I'd have to put 5 years at least into personal branding, and then it could be completely derailed from one clown with a big enough audience or something like that. So
Yeah.
that little sizzle reel was coming from the idea of like, well, what if I end up paying some celebrities to troll me, like Gilbert Gottfried, the Affleck duck? Then nobody's going to remember what some internet troll says compared to these celebrities. And really what that comes down to is that, that helped me. Like once I had these, Gilbert Gottfried saying these terrible things about me, and I already had that posted online, it kind of ripped the Band-Aid as far as that fear of embarrassment. And one of the other things, like, so that's one of the biggest parts as far as realizing the changes I had to go through in order to become, well known in this space and all that. I knew that you had to be a little bit different, and this definitely fits the bill as far as different stuff, especially in real estate. Everything is very straight laced. People
Uh-huh.
don't really take risks with their reputation or being associated with vulgarities and silliness like that. It's actually fairly humorless for the most part. I tend to find. But one of the other things I'd like to add as far as the journey that I think is most important to people in the audience is I remember distinctly back, it was like 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago, something like that, realizing that I had to smile more. And because I was doing this pivot into, the public eye out of being a private person, I did not want to do that. I did not
Yeah.
want to smile more. I wanted to, focus on, okay, this is what we want to accomplish. This is what we're going to achieve. Let's do business. Let's make things happen. And, like being happy, go getter, like that kind of, like that part wasn't something that was attractive to me. But it really is important to demonstrate that energy to people. And I find that once it becomes a habit, it's just easier and easier and easier. And that's something you, of course, excel at, Brandon. You never see a picture of you without those pearly whites being shown off. So good job on you.
I love those too. Before you keep on dropping pearls here, I want to unpack what you just said. You have solved something in a way I've not heard anybody else do. I can tell you it is the bane of everyone's existence when they get a bad Google review or somebody that is writing something negative. For whatever reason, you can have 100 great reviews and testimonials, and for some reason, all your new potential customers they want to focus on the bad for some reason. And I'm a I'm guilty of this as well. Like when I go on Amazon, I'm looking at products. I tend to read those bad reviews. I want to know. And I'm kind of looking at the bad reviews going like, all right, does this person sound a little bit ridiculous? Because if that's the case, then I'm like, okay, maybe I can push that aside. But what you've done, and I've seen this completely, especially in the medical industry. Like I used to sell medical devices to orthopedic surgeons. In that space specifically, as a doctor, a negative review is the world. It can literally ruin some doctors' practices. That's how bad, because people tend to take healthcare and surgery to, I mean, deciding on who's going to operate on you, you take those reviews to a much higher degree as if you're trying to find the best burrito in town, right? And
Mhm.
so this is a problem that many business owners face, these negative reviews. What you've done is you've kind of flipped it on itself. You said, you know what, I'm going to go out and I'm going to pay people to write these satirical, what did you call it, trolling videos, and I'm going to put it out there, and hopefully my customers can see that before they see the more authentic disgruntled reviews. And that just, it does something psychologically. You know what I mean? Like I don't, explain that to me. Like why does that kind of take away from the other, the authentic, more disgruntled reviews when you do it that way? Like there's a psychological switch that happens. Can you explain that?
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that I'd want to say first, though, it's a plea to the audience, which is I think the fix for people dwelling on those 1-star reviews and ignoring the gazillion 5, 4 stars, 3-star reviews. I think that just like with misinformation, I think people are starting to become more educated when it comes to what misinformation looks like, and
Yeah.
realizing that, if somebody is on one of the polls, then something's up, right? There's something not quite right. So with my own shopping habits, one thing that I put more weight on, and I learned this, oh geez, I think it was about 7 years ago, is to look at the 3-star reviews. Always focus on the 3-star reviews, because they're more likely to give credit where credit is due, and then also not be so nice when there's a significant flaw. And I think if we take that attitude, then I think that you're going to make better opinions, or you're going to form better opinions based off of what you're reading. And you're absolutely right. You mentioned medicine as well, and it's so funny because like I've been fortunate in my life to have a handful of physicians as best friends. And so I'm able to actually, level with them the way that doctors tend to level with each other, behind closed doors, and have those kinds of conversations. And you're absolutely right that they do put on this rather humorless exterior. And so that's why I love hanging around with doctors, because if I can get them to crack, then I know I've done a really great job. And you haven't seen humorless until you've dealt with the ones in Taiwan. And
Huh.
I'm gonna get a little bit ridiculous about this as an example. And it's true, I was borrowing from the show Jackass a little for this joke. But I was having hip problems one time, and I went to the emergency room in Taiwan, and they ended up doing the X-ray to what was going on. So I decided to have some fun with the radiologist, right? And because one thing I don't reveal to most people is my first summer in college, I took electrical engineering, but my one of my 2 summer jobs was working the door at a comedy club. So I ended up watching all these stand-up comedians do their routines, like 3 to 5 times in a single weekend. So I not only got, a couple ideas from them, but also I found out what really tickles my funny bone. And the thing that tickles my funny bone is the stuff where I just can't believe that somebody would go in front of a group of people and say those particular things. So when I decided to have fun with this radiologist, I kept a complete poker face and he put it up there. I was waiting for it. I'm like, so I pointed like in there. I'm like, hey, I haven't seen my car keys in a couple weeks. They're not right. Just to try, and like totally deadpan and serious. He just turns around, no. Right? He's just like totally serious, right? Which is hilarious because I was in Taiwan. I didn't have a car, so
Yeah.
So it was just completely fabricated, that kind of stuff. That's what I like to do to try and, get a rise out of people. Just basically go, okay, how much self-awareness does this person have? Like, can they tell when somebody's pulling their leg or not? And yeah, that I don't think that was his favorite day. But I don't do that kind of stuff. I don't torture medical
Yeah.
professionals anymore because I know that they've seen it all.
Uh-huh. Yeah. What's a joke to you? They're like, nah, dog, like I've seen that before.
Exactly. I've seen
That
that
doesn't
before. I'd done
surprise me,
that.
you
It
know?
was not pretty. Exactly. It was an
Yeah.
insurance claim from, yeah.
So going back to the personal branding and building that. So you mentioned smiling a lot. Obviously, people who smile tend to do better with relationships, business in general, right? People just like to do business with people who are more positive. You got the idea of, hey, go ahead and create some satirical trolls so that can kind of de-escalate any kind of future authentic trolls that might do something. So managing the reviews. So what other gold nuggets have you come across as your career helping people build their personal brands?
Right. So the biggest one is make sure that you aren't completely ignoring fundamental parts of people's personalities, especially the universals. Okay. So me coming from tech and also from engineering, we're extremely skeptical people. I think physicians are also in that category. Attorneys are definitely skeptical. And so I think that the skeptical side of things is something that's largely ignored. And when you're especially dealing with investors and, raising capital, building funds or anything like that, if you avoid stating the obvious first, that barrier to trust, it's just too much. It's too difficult to pass. And one of the prime examples, like people may have heard of SEO or search engine optimization. That's something that I spent a significant time on with my online business, building CRM agency. So one of the things I was thinking was, all right, what's missing here? What are some search engine terms that are out there? Which is why I did write the book, Real Estate is a Scam. And realestateisascam.com is where it is. And part of that was because I knew somebody's going to be Googling it. And I'm
Yeah.
more than happy to take that traffic. But the topics on realestateisascam.com and the content of the books, it was definitely partially reactionary, specifically because you'd catch these gurus or these mentors saying, "Oh, get into commercial real estate, syndicate one deal. If you have a great deal, then the money will follow." And then when you actually get into it, you find it's like there's a big asterisk at the end of a lot of what they say. Sure,
Yeah.
like the acquisition fee may be like more than a lot of people make in a year, but if you're just getting into the business, you're a minority shareholder, so you're not getting the brunt of like the lion's share of those acquisitions fees. So really what I was up to, coming from that technical background filled with skeptics, I felt like, well, instead of trying to sweep the unpleasantries under the rug, how about instead I get educated, I talk to enough full-timers and find out it's like, okay, well, this seems to be a problem with how this works. Like one of the things is if you're not an accredited investor, then you're basically stuck with a 506B deal, which means that you can't publicly advertise. So how are you supposed to get investors in your deal if you're not allowed to turn around to strangers and say, "Hey, I got this deal. Are you interested?" The same way that you do on something like Shark Tank. And so then instead of trying to sweep those issues under the rug like a lot of gurus and mentors and all that kind of stuff do, I decided, why don't I make a video out of every single way that I can think of where somebody's predictably going to lose their shirt. And then in the same video, I quickly say, and this is what full timers do to make sure they don't get caught by that particular issue. They don't lose their shirt on these real estate deals. And Real Estate is a Scam, the book that is focusing even more on those different tropes that coaches say, and letting people know there are steps you have to take as you're meeting new potential investors to make sure that the SEC won't take away your business.
Wow. So there's so much. So what are some of the biggest mistakes that you see, investors, and when I say investors, people looking to invest money, right? Not necessarily capital raisers. Let's kind of break that down. So biggest mistakes you see investors make, and then the actual capital raiser investors that are like managing the deal.
I absolutely love that question, and it sounds like it was prepped. And the beautiful thing is, I know it wasn't, but here we go. It's like Brandon is so great at this. This is really awesome. But the biggest one, I'd say that the biggest mistake that new investors would make, it's not understanding underwriting. And I actually have a webinar on Thursdays right now. It might change in the future. LinkedIn is the best way to reach me. So if you're interested in that, you can catch that. And I'm easy to find because my distinct last name. But the webinar that I have, it is called "How Real Estate Deals Hit Double-Digit Returns," and it's coming from the perspective of lenders because I don't like the idea of asking the barber if I need a haircut because I just think the conflict of interest is going to get in the way of knowing the truth. And really, what I go through is the fundamentals of underwriting is to understand that everything you see on an offering memorandum, that sort of thing, it's a projection. So, in other words, they're making estimates based off of previous year's revenue, previous year's taxes, previous year's insurance, the utility bills, all of these different things. And the short version is there's somewhere between 8 to 12 different factors where if they balloon out of nowhere, like the insurance in Texas would be a great example for that, then your top of the line numbers, they probably won't be met. And that is a pretty big problem. Also like CapEx would be a prime example. If your upgrades, your construction costs, your renovations, if they're way more than they say, then you're probably not going to make as much as the OM, the offer memorandum states. So understanding the ways that a deal can go wrong is very, very important. And in the webinar, I reveal the fact that there are other ways to get proceeds from real estate where those what I call points of failure, where they can balloon and mess up your deal. It's a lot fewer in something like a debt fund because at the end of the day, it's like, well, do the borrowers pay as agreed, or do you have to chase them for it? So the points of failure are fewer, and there are simpler ways to do the math to make sure that you're protected from bad actors or unfortunate situations.
Yeah, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. How about the capital raisers? Biggest mistakes you see them making?
Yeah, well, the biggest one is just they don't document their substantive relations. And that is legalese, for meaning you have to have written proof that the people who you offered an investment position in your deal, you have to have written proof that you knew them before the PSA, purchase sale agreement, before it was signed and created. You had to know them before you actually signed that, because you're not allowed to publicly solicit people. You're not allowed to, open up your jacket and say, "Hey, you want to buy a deal?"
Yeah.
That's not okay. And so if you don't have that proof, then if you don't hit your targets, your investors can turn around to the SEC and say that person publicly solicited me. That was not, like they should have their exemption yanked. And if your exemption gets yanked, you as a capital raiser, you have to pay back your investors plus interest. And you're raising capital in the first place because you don't have the money to pay them back plus interest. So that's going to be a problem. It might lead to bankruptcy. And if you do go bankrupt, then there's a big chance that you're going to be facing criminal allegations of fraud. And most people don't like how they look in orange. So that's the biggest mistake that a capital raiser can really do. But the other big one is just really work on the relationship. Make sure you understand your investors' needs, tolerance for risk. These are all things that are inside a typical RIA, registered investment advisor's suitability questionnaire, which is usually the written proof that you actually knew this person, and knowing them is not enough. If you've had, a few conversations with your neighbor about their daffodils under their windowsill, that's not the same as saying, it's like, okay, so how risk averse are you? What percent of your net worth would this constitute if our minimum is like 50K or 100K or 150K or something like that? Because if it's most of your money, it shouldn't be going into something that's illiquid like a syndication, because like hopefully you'll be able to refinance in 2 years and get all your principal back. But that 2 years might turn into 5 years. It might turn into 7 years. And if your daughter has a sweet 16 and you want to send her and her friends to Hawaii, well, unfortunately, your money is a balcony in unit 32A
Yeah.
and fridge and stove units, and so, but that's, I'm getting a little bit negative on the whole thing, but those are the things that you have to understand, especially as a capital raiser, before you get really gung-ho about it. And then there's the fact that you shouldn't really be telling people that you're a capital raiser anyway, because everybody should be a broker dealer if they're going to be getting some sort of compensation based on the success rather than just the effort as a whole. So that's a
Yeah,
mouthful.
best thing you can do, talk to an SEC attorney before doing anything
Bingo.
on that route, and that'll keep you out of trouble.
Hmm.
Love that tangent that we went on about there. Gold stuff. What about, continue? Do you have any more bombs, gold nuggets when it comes to building a personal brand?
So yeah, for personal branding, as you could hear from the troll videos and that sort of thing, my big one is if everybody's zigging, you ought to zag. And there are many ways to do that. Like one of my best friends in this industry, he was starting in multifamily syndication the same time that I was. I remember him working from his garage, coming to different Zoom meetings and all that kind of stuff. And everybody was multifamily, multifamily, multifamily. And then when you get them one on one or something like that, they'd be like, yeah, it's whenever I'm looking at a deal, they're just not penciling. People tend to be too proud of their properties. It's like making a profit. It's not looking so good on this. Well, his zag was to go into RV parks when nobody was really thinking of those sorts of things. So that's a great example of a zag. But for me, it's like instead of just doing hey, everything's wonderful. Look at this beautiful property. Look at all the
Yeah.
happy residents. Let's find something that's a little bit more distinct. But the other big one is that you have to still be yourself. If you are trying to be fake, you're going to run out. You're going to run out of fakeness. So you need to tap into something. You might have to make a little bit of a caricature of yourself. And what I mean by that is you find something that, it's definitely part of you, but you just amplify it a little bit, because there needs to be something inside you that's absolutely genuine, or else people will just be like, yeah, I just don't buy this person. This person, they have to have something real. Like what actually makes them tick? What's going to make sure that they don't disappear to the Philippines or something like that?
Yeah, one thing that we really tried to make an effort on with our personal branding, to your point and what you just said, being yourself, is the storytelling. That's what really allows people to connect, with us. Is I try to put my story out there, the HBG story, and there's an art to storytelling. A lot of people when they tell a story, it's like, well, I, was in medical device sales for a number of years. I went to school at UT, and then I graduated, and then did this career for 4 or 5 years, and I got into this, and then from here, it's very bland. Storytelling, the art of storytelling, is being able to talk to the heart. And so I've really just changed up my entire, story. And there's a really good book called oh man, who tells it? It's like the My Story framework. It's the hero's journey. If you Google the hero's journey, it'll tell you how to go about telling a good story. And all Hollywood does is use this hero's journey. It's in the famous movie, Star Wars with Luke Skywalker, and it goes something along the lines of like, you've got the hero, and he's kind of insecure about some stuff, and he's got this external struggle, and then along the way he finds a guide, Obi-Wan Kenobi in this circumstance, that guide shows him how to use like the force. And as a result, he has this antagonist, Darth Vader, and, the whole bad guys in it that he battles and he overcomes it. And through this journey, he becomes like the new person. He knows how to use the force for good. All of his insecurities melt away. And so for me, it was learning how to tell the story in a right way that frames it in a way that is very engaging for the person, because we engage with stories. We don't really engage with just the rational. I went to college and I did this and I did that. And so really getting good at storytelling. That's just one thing I've noticed that's really worked well for us. What are your thoughts?
I think you're absolutely right. And just to bring it to the audience, if you're thinking about your own story, another way of putting it is your own narrative of your story. One of the things, I mentioned about realizing that I had to smile more, and that's intertwined into my life story. It's one of these days I'll put pen to paper on another book and get dive deeper into that. But one of the things that may be more relatable to the audience is maybe your life was not one that you really want to dwell on. You don't really like for me it's like if you look at the the headlining, if you ignore the fine print, things are exciting, amazing, all of the above. But like living in Taiwan for 15 years, like my mom passed away after I was there for under 7 years, and that's the reason why you don't move to the other side of the world, is because you might lose the person who raised you. Like that is like really the worst situation you have, because all you're going to say to yourself is like, how am I going to get those years back? And because you can't. And so like there are many parts of my own story where I didn't want to share them because I felt like I didn't know how to turn it into a narrative that was both like, it was honest, it was genuine, and not just a bummer overall.
Yeah.
Like sure, if you read the last chapters or something like that, things start going really really well, then that makes like all the trials and tribulations, that it makes them all worthwhile. But especially if you're doing something like like a career shift, then it won't really feel like you've necessarily got a happy ending. You might have the hope that you're on the right track and the things that you were doing before, they were unfulfilling or something like that. But finding your narrative like you're describing, I think, is very, very important. And I just want to give the people in the audience that if you are not happy about sharing your background, your life story, because it's too intertwined with too many painful events, experiences that sound great, but in practice they were not fun. You spent most of your time terrified, that sort of thing. I encourage you to give it time, because with time and practice you'll become more comfortable with where you came from, and you'll be able to find a way to reconcile the fact that that you're not just trying to paint the whole thing with a nice color. You're not trying to put a happy face on something that was actually tough to deal with. And that's my advice for the audience as you're getting into personal branding.
People are sick and tired of the social media world where everything is perfect, everything's great. They're so sick and tired of it. People want to see raw. People want to see some stuff. I'd made some posts about some real estate deals that we did that didn't go well because I saw that nobody else was posting that. Talk about a zag, right? Because I know that there's this, you got $2 trillion of bridge debt in the commercial real estate world. Luckily, we're not in that. We're not in commercial real estate that came down. I know tons of people are filing personal bankruptcies, but it's a little inauthentic to keep posting saying that, oh, everything's great, everything, nothing's happened. So I made a post and I was like, hey, we had some deals go bad. And some investors actually lost some of their money in some of these investments, but here's how we solved that problem. We had to pivot that over, give them some equity in some upcoming deals that we have, and we're working on resolving that, and we've got a silver lining, and everything's good. Had 7 great years of business where we made a lot of money. Had a year and a half where we didn't, where deals didn't go through. That's going to happen, and people want to see that. And it was funny because a lot of investors will hop on a call with us, and I've had some guys point blank ask me, so have you ever been in a deal where you've lost money? And I said, actually, yeah, I have, and I'll explain the story and I'll tell them. And they go, great, I'm glad to hear that. I would be concerned if you'd never been through a downturn. Totally wouldn't think to do that. My old self 7 years ago probably would have pulled back and been very hesitant to be authentic and share those insecurities with the audience and the people that I'm talking to, thinking, oh, they're gonna think there's something wrong with me, something's bad. But it's been really crazy to see how the reaction of people have been, even to the investors that, have kind of been in this with us, just being open and transparent about what's going on. I mean, several of them have continued to invest with us. They're like, cool, all right, we had 7 good years, one bad year, let's keep going. It's been very refreshing to see that. And so people want that real, people want that raw. They're craving it.
Right. And of course one of the other problems though is that you were also like I'm busy thinking about some of the capital raisers for example that I've run into where the deal sponsor actually stole from them, or didn't pay their piece of the acquisition fee, under ridiculous pretenses that if you actually know the securities law, they were basically trying to do. They're saying, oh well, you only hit this amount of money, you need to hit this amount of money, or else you get nothing. It's like that's not how it works. That's success-based compensation, and you need to be a broker-dealer for that. So yeah, those people are definitely out there, and they have been, doing those sorts of things. And it's tragic when you talk to somebody where, they were so starry-eyed and so motivated, and they were smiling and dialing with the best of them, and still, just when times got bad, they're just like, you know what? What if we just don't pay you? But that's the risk you take whenever you're doing something that's illegal. And of course, if you don't have applicable skills, then maybe you are better off, being more of a volunteer. But that's also why you got to make sure that you involve your own securities attorney. Make sure that your contribution is protected. You actually are part of the deal, and you can get your piece of the pie in return for what you're doing. But I absolutely agree. If you haven't had Joe Cook out of Arizona, who I work with these days, he has a great way of putting it. Is if you haven't had your tail twisted, then you really don't know what time it is, I guess you'd say.
Yeah, there's a lot of truth to that. Dan, this has been a pleasure. For those, you're a best-selling author. You've got two books. I believe figured it out, and real estate is a scam. You've got a real estate debt fund. You do personal branding. There's a lot to you. If people want to learn more about you and your companies, where can they go?
Yep. So hit me up on LinkedIn is the best spot. Again, my name's right here. Dan Fradenburgh. I'm the only one who's on that. And because Figure It Out, both of the books are available on Amazon. Because Figure It Out was about attention to detail. Because I figured, like, when you start writing a book, you have to think it's like, okay, there's a gazillion books out there. What do I have to really contribute? And as a programmer, the problem with programming is if you make any mistakes, the thing just breaks. It stops working. So it has to be a certain version of perfection to even work. And that requires attention to detail. And in all of my eclectic career, my job history, I always noticed we'd try to hire for attention to detail and we'd fail. And so I figured that's what I'd write it about. So when you are on LinkedIn and you are looking me up, on both sides of my name, it has these little attention signs, and that's what that's all about. But it's another thing to just try and get people to stop the scroll. You're scrolling down and it looks like an error, Dan Fradenberg, and
Yeah.
that's what that's all about. So that's the best way to reach me.
Cool, man. Hey, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for coming on the show today.
My pleasure. This is awesome, Brandon.
And yeah, and hey, if you got value today, show Dan some love. So show me some love. Leave us a review, like this, share it with your friends and family, subscribe, and we'll see you guys next time.